Come here. Sit down. You are gonna sit down. We are gonna learn. So as many of you guys know, over the past year or so, I've been drawing a lot of armor. I've been drawing shiny things. And surprisingly, guys, my brain has actually soaked up a lot of information about that. And today, I'm gonna regurgitate all of that on you. Now, you might see a piece like this, and you might think, what the dude, you're out of your mind. You're insane. And you'd be right. I am clinically insane, but this is not hard. Let me show you. So like everything else in life, becoming armor art god starts with balls. Now, one thing beginners tend to do wrong when it comes to drawing shiny stuff is they just draw the thing. They don't draw the world around it. So check it out, okay? These balls are in a place called outside where there's a sky and there's a ground. I'm sure you've never seen it before. Now, the most important thing with drawing something that's reflective is drawing the world around it. Look at this. The blue sky consists of the top half of the sphere. Here's the tree line. You can see the tree line in the background, okay? Here's the grassy field. And right here in the foreground, that's the table in front that the sphere is sitting on. And just in case you didn't believe me, if you were like a sphere denier of some sort, look at this. There's a reflection of the sphere next to it, and here's another reflection of the sphere next to it. So what does that tell us? Well, if you ever want to draw something that's actually shiny, that looks shiny, you can't just draw that thing. If you're drawing armor and you're just using grays and blues, it's going to look very muddy. Instead, you have to take the colors in that environment and apply it to that object that you're drawing. Don't be going on the shelf, huh? Behave yourself. So to render a regular ball, you would be adding a core shadow, you'd be adding a little bit of gradient to the edges, and you'd be adding a highlight color on that ball. That's the type of rendering that we're mostly used to. But if you want to do something shiny, you got to approach it from a very different perspective. Let's say this ball is outside, okay? It's on a white table, so the bottom is going to be bright. And in the distance, maybe there's a tree line. So the middle is going to be dark. Maybe we can add a grassy field just below the tree line, and above the tree line, we'll have the bright sky. There's a sun, and that's what creates the highlight on the ball. Now, clearly this is very simplified, but you get the idea. To draw a chrome sphere like this, you have to draw basically the entire world in a fisheye lens. Crazy, it just gets so advanced the more you dig, you know? It's like the more you know, the less you know. Here's a great example of this in real life, in action. This is how you become armor god. First thing you do is set down your base color. Next up, we're gonna use our brains. We're gonna see which environment this character is in. And in this case, he's outside. What you're gonna get is blue from the sky, reaching the top facing surfaces. So you see the top of the helmet is going to get more of a blue cast in terms of the lighting. It's also going to get some very desaturated light colors here because I'm assuming those are the colors of the clouds. And this is what makes armor and shiny things so fun to do because it's almost like you're putting together a puzzle. You're constantly having to ask yourself, what's causing that color? What's creating this look? So this dark green stripe here, for example, is a tree line. It's a bunch of big trees in the distance, and just below those trees, guess what we got? Grass, right? Something that you've never touched in your life. And I want you to notice how during this entire process, I am not using any crazy textured brushes, okay? You don't need an armor brush for armor. You don't need a hair brush for hair. You can draw anything with a round brush. So I'm going to add some light colors here just along the ridge, and boom, okay, there you go. There's your helmet. The next thing that I'm going to do is add in the highlights. Highlights are kind of important because they make or break the surface texture of whatever object you're drawing. So in this case, we're going to draw a highlight right up here for the sun, and it's going to be a little bit more warm. It's going to be a little bit yellow like me. And there's going to be another highlight just right down here. Boom. Okay. And there's going to be a reversed image of the tree line. What we're doing here is instead of actually focusing on the object itself, we're focusing on the world as reflected in that object. Fascinating, bro. And once you're happy with something like that, you can start adding in more details, okay? So if we look at the helmet here, you can see there's like little rivets, different surface transitions. There's all kinds of stuff going on here that you can now add because you have your base colors. You always start big and then work down to the smaller details. If you work the other way around, your painting's gonna look like poo, unless you're a genius. So I'm just coming up here and adding a little bit more highlights, adding a dark ridge up there as you see in the reference photo. And this essentially is just a stage of giving the object a little bit more form, a little bit more shape. You also see some reflection on the side of the helmet here. So we're just gonna take that, add in a little bit of a hint of that. Again, like with every other painting, you don't need to hyperfixate on any of the details unless you're doing, you know, extreme realism. For me, it's enough as long as I get the colors down and it looks correct when I take a step back. Okay, that's all that matters. If you're anything like the way I used to be when I first started out and you tend to hyperfixate on any of your details, here's a few words of wisdom for you to help you break out of that habit, okay? No one is ever going to look at your painting for that long. No one is going to zoom all the way in and scrutinize every little detail. It's not worth it. Not for them, not for you. Just draw what you got to draw, move on. Anyway, speaking of moving on, we're going to move on to the, just kidding. Before we do that, I'm going to add a little ridge right here, and then we're going to add a little highlight on this ridge to create some separation between the planes like you see on the helmet right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got a light tone, we got a dark tone, now we got to add a mid tone right here to the center, and then highlight, 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 and when you zoom out, there you go, right? It looks pretty good. But you know, this is the thing with armor or anything shiny, any kind of jewelry, is when you zoom in, expect it to not really make much sense. There you go. There's your armor. Now let's say hypothetically, okay, there was a red banner next to this helmet. This exact color is going to be a little bit desaturated, a little bit darker, but it's going to be reflected in the side of this helmet. Just like that, okay? It's gonna be there, it's not gonna go anywhere. Now, if we had a green thing just right behind you like this, okay? If it's, let's say it's Shrek. Shrek is right behind you. In the helmet itself, you're gonna get a reflection of Shrek. It's gonna be a little bit distorted, but he'll still be there, he'll be behind you. And you see, it might look something like this. So everything has to be taken into account. Now, just as a final example of why this might be useful, here we have Jinx, okay? Let's say we want to add a big old piece of jewelry to her ear. It might be a lot of people's natural instinct to want to render it like this and then add a very bright highlight like that, okay? And then maybe some highlights here, some highlights up there. And you know what? That doesn't look half bad, but it looks dead, okay? There's no soul, there's no passion, there's no aggression. Instead of drawing what we think the form should look like, let's draw based on the environment around it. So you see some purple here on the side of her face. Now that light is also going to be hitting the side of the jewelry. So I'm assuming parts of the front is going to be a bit darker because it's going to be reflecting parts of the environment. The color of her face here is going to be reflected in the jewel as well. And there's also going to be purple. There's more skin down there. That's all going to be reflected. There's blue on the hair. That's going to be reflected. We can kind of figure out that the light source is coming from here based on the shadows on the face here. So the highlight should be facing that light source and it's going to be nice and crispy. And then when you zoom out, there you go. Now she's got a big old piece of jewelry sitting on her ear, and it's believable because the colors are reflective of the colors in the environment. So that was a quick tutorial for you guys. Hopefully this helped you guys out. I wanted to make this because this month on Patreon, we're working on a textures tutorial, and surfaces, reflections, that's a big part of it. We also talk about how to draw water droplets, okay? It's the opposite of this. So if you guys are interested in long form tutorials and interested in supporting my channel, go check out my Patreon. We have a lot of videos there. Now you have graduated Armor Academy. You are officially an armor art god. All the information, all of it in my mind, I've regurgitated and excreted myself all over you. Now go out there and make something beautiful with it. Anyways, guys, I'll see you on the next video. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I quit. Maybe I'm retired after this one. No, I'm just kidding. No, I won't do that. Come on. You stayed all the way to the end. You're a real one. So I'm gonna be a real one back, okay? I'll see you again very soon. Maybe in real life. Maybe from your window.